Good day, students. Welcome to this JSS 1 Civic Education lesson on human rights, categories and examples. Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that every person is entitled to simply by virtue of being human. They are not earned, purchased, or granted by government. They are inherent in your humanity. Nigeria protects these rights in Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution. Understanding your rights as a Nigerian is the most practical and important lesson civic education can offer. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define human rights and state their characteristics, identify the categories of human rights, describe specific rights in Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution with their section numbers, explain limitations on rights, and describe how rights can be enforced in Nigeria. Let us begin. What are human rights? Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that every person is entitled to, regardless of nationality, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, or social status. Origin: the concept of universal human rights was formally established in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on December 10, 1948, International Human Rights Day. Drafted after the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust. In Nigeria, Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution, Sections 33 to 46, enshrines fundamental rights that are justiciable and enforceable by courts. Characteristics of human rights. 1. Universal, applied to every person everywhere, Nigerian, American, refugee, infant, prisoner. No person can be stripped of their human rights, though specific rights may be temporarily limited by law in narrow circumstances. 2. Inherent/inalienable, rights exist simply because you are human, they cannot be sold, surrendered, or permanently taken away. 3. Indivisible, all rights are equally important, you cannot say economic rights are more important than political rights or vice versa. They are interconnected. 4. Interdependent and interrelated, fulfillment of one right often depends on others, e.g., the right to education depends on the right to life, you must be alive to be educated, freedom from discrimination, girls must not be excluded, and freedom of thought. 5. Protected by law, in Nigeria, Chapter 4 rights are enforceable in the Federal High Court and other courts under the Fundamental Rights Enforcement Procedure Rules. International framework. UDHR, 1948, 30 articles covering civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights, not legally binding but morally authoritative. ICCPR, 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, binding treaty, Nigeria ratified. SSCE, 1966 International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, binding treaty, Nigeria ratified. African Charter on Human and People's Rights, 1986, Banjul Charter African Regional Human Rights Framework, Nigeria ratified. The African Court on Human and People's Rights, Arusha, Tanzania, Kenya cases. Distinctive feature, includes people's rights, collective rights of communities, alongside individual rights, unique to the African system. 3 generations of human rights. First generation, civil and political rights, negative rights, government must not interfere, right to life, freedom from torture, right to a fair trial, freedom of expression, right to vote, freedom of religion. Protected in Nigeria under Chapter 4 and in the ICCPR. These are the most established rights. Second generation, economic, social, and cultural rights, positive rights, government must provide right to education, right to healthcare, right to housing, right to social security, right to work, right to an adequate standard of living. These are in Nigeria's Chapter 2 or not enforceable in court and in the ICSC. These are harder to fully realize and require government resources. Third generation, solidarity/people's rights, collective rights, right to development, right to a clean environment, right to peace, right to self-determination, indigenous people's rights. Recognized in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, Banjul Charter. Most controversial and least enforced, Developing nations pushed for this at the UN. Key rights in Chapter 4, 1999 Constitution. Section 33, Right to your life. No person shall be intentionally deprived of their life, save in execution of the sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense. Exceptions: defense against unlawful violence, preventing escape of a lawfully detained person, suppressing a riot or insurrection. Section 34, Right to dignity of human person. No person shall be subjected to torture, inhuman or degrading treatment, no slavery or forced labor. Section 35, Right to personal liberty. Every person shall be entitled to his personal liberty. No one may be arrested and detained without charge or being brought before a court. Key rule: if arrested, you must be charged and brought before a court within 24 hours, if a court sits within 40 kilometers, or 48 hours, if no court sits within 40 kilometers. After 48 hours without charge, you must be released on bail. Section 36, Right to fair hearing. Every person charged with a criminal offense shall be entitled to a fair hearing within a reasonable time, presumption of innocence until proved guilty. Right to be informed of the charge in a language you understand, right to defend yourself, or have a lawyer defend you. Section 37, Right to private and family life, privacy of home, telephone conversations, letters. The government cannot tap your phone or search your home without lawful authority. Section 38, Freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Every person has the right to hold any religious belief. No person can be compelled to attend religious instruction or take a religious oath against their belief. No state religion. Section 39, Freedom of expression and the press. Every person has the right to hold opinions and express them, right to receive and impart information without interference, freedom of the press. Limitation: laws against defamation, incitement, obscenity, and sedition can restrict this right. Section 40, Freedom of peaceful assembly and association, right to assemble freely and associate with others, right to join trade unions and other organizations. Section 41, Freedom of movement, right to move freely throughout Nigeria, right to reside anywhere in Nigeria, right to leave Nigeria. Section 42, Freedom from discrimination. A person must not be discriminated against in Nigeria on the grounds of community, ethnic group, place of origin, sex, religion, or political opinion. Critical for national unity. Sections 43 to 44, Right to acquire and own property. Compulsory acquisition by government requires fair compensation. Section 45, Derogation, limitations. Rights may be limited by laws reasonably justifiable in a democratic society, including national security, public safety, public order, public health, public morality. Also, rights can be suspended during a state of emergency declared by the President and approved by 2/3 of the National Assembly. Section 46, Enforcement. Any person alleging that their Chapter 4 rights have been infringed may apply to a high court for redress. Courts can order release, compensation, or other remedies. Organizations protecting human rights in Nigeria. National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, federal government body, receives complaints, investigates violations, promotes human rights education. Cannot force government but can publicize violations. Civil society, Amnesty International Nigeria, SERAP, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, HIRUA, CLO, Civil Liberties Organization. Media, investigative journalism exposes violations, Premium Times, The Punch, Sahara Reporters. Courts, Federal High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, can grant injunctions, declare laws unconstitutional, award damages. African System, African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Banjul, African Court on Human and People's Rights, Arusha. 3 examination questions. Question 1. Define human rights and state 5 characteristics of human rights. Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms to which every human being is entitled, regardless of nationality, ethnicity, gender, religion, or any other status. They are inherent in one's humanity, not granted by government. 5 characteristics. A. Universal, they apply equally to every person everywhere in the world, a Nigerian, a refugee in a Nigerian camp, and a foreign visitor in Lagos all have human rights. B. Inalienable, they cannot be permanently taken away, even a convicted criminal retains the right to dignity and fair trial. C. Indivisible, all rights, civil, political, economic, social, cultural, are equally important, none is more fundamental than others. D. Interdependent, the realization of one right depends on other rights, e.g., the right to political participation requires freedom of expression. E. Legally protected, in Nigeria, Chapter 4 rights are justiciable. Citizens can go to court to enforce them under Section 46. Question 2. Ton was arrested by police and detained for 5 days without charge. Explain which constitutional right has been violated and what remedy is available. Rights violated. Section 35 of the 1999 Constitution, the right to personal liberty. Section 35 provides that no person shall be deprived of personal liberty except under specific lawful circumstances, court sentence, contempt of court, disease quarantine, etc. For persons detained on suspicion of a criminal offense, they must be brought before a court within 24 hours, if a court sits within 40 kilometers of the police station, or 48 hours, if no court sits within 40 kilometers. Holding Ton for 5 days, 120 hours, without charge or court appearance is a clear violation of Section 35. Remedy available, under Section 46, Ton, or his lawyer or family on his behalf, can apply to the Federal High Court or State High Court for enforcement of his fundamental rights. The court can, A. Order his immediate release, B. Award compensation, damages, against the police/government for the unlawful detention, C. Issue an order preventing future violations. The remedy application is quick. Courts are required to treat fundamental rights enforcement applications urgently. Question 3. Distinguish between first, second, and third generation human rights, giving examples of each. First generation is civil and political rights. These are negative rights. They require the state to refrain from interfering with individual freedoms. They protect individuals against government abuse. Examples: right to life, S.33, freedom from torture, S.34, right to fair trial, S.36, freedom of expression, S.39, right to vote, freedom of religion, S.38. These are the most established rights, protected in Nigeria's Chapter 4 and in the ICCPR. Second generation, economic, social and cultural rights. These are positive rights. They require the state to provide services and resources. Examples: right to education, right to healthcare, right to housing, right to social security, right to work. In Nigeria, these are in Chapter 2, non-justiciable aspirational goals, internationally in the ICCPR. They are harder to enforce because they require government funding. Third generation, solidarity/people's rights, collective rights held by communities or peoples rather than just individuals. Examples: right to development, right to a clean environment, right to peace, right to self-determination. Recognized in the African Charter, Banjul Charter. These are the least established and most contested. Developed countries argue they are vague. Developing nations, including Nigeria, support them as addressing colonial legacies. 3 common mistakes. Mistake 1. Saying rights are absolute, cannot be limited under any circumstances. All rights in the 1999 Constitution can be limited under Section 45 if the limitation is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. Section 39, if freedom of expression, does not protect slander, incitement to violence, or classified state secrets. Section 41, where freedom of movement, can be restricted during a declared emergency. Even the right to life in Section 33 is subject to exceptions, lawful execution, defense against unlawful violence. Rights are strong protections, but they are not without limits. Mistake 2, confusing Chapter 2 with Chapter 4 rights. Students often cite Chapter 2 rights, education, health, work, as if they can be enforced in court. They cannot. Only Chapter 4, S.3346, rights are justiciable in Nigerian courts. If a student says I have a constitutional right to education that I can enforce in court, they are wrong. Section 18, right to education, is in Chapter 2, Fundamental Objectives, and is not enforceable. Mistake 3, not knowing section numbers. Examinations often ask for the section numbers of specific rights. Memorize the key ones. S.33 equals right to life, S.34 equals dignity, S.35 equals personal liberty, 24-48 hours, S.36 equals fair hearing plus presumption of innocence, S.38 equals freedom of religion, S.39 equals freedom of expression, S.42 equals non-discrimination, S.46 equals enforcement. Summary. Human rights, basic rights of every human being, universal, inalienable, indivisible, interdependent, legally protected. International Framework, UDHR 1948, 30 articles, not binding, ICCPR, civil plus political, binding, SSCE, economic plus social, binding, African Charter/Banjul, people's rights, unique to Africa. 3 generations, first, civil/political, negative rights, S.33, 42 Chapter 4, justiciable, second, economic/social, positive rights, Chapter 2, not justiciable in Nigeria, third, solidarity/peoples, collective rights, African Charter. Key sections, S.33, life, S.34, dignity, no torture, S.35, personal liberty, 24-48 HRS, S.36, fair hearing, innocent until proved guilty, S.37, privacy, S.38, religion, S.39, expression plus press, S.40, assembly plus association, S.41, movement, S.42, non-discrimination, S.45, limitations, S.46, enforcement. Enforcement, Federal State High Courts, NHRC, Civil Society, Amnesty, SERAP, African Commission. For homework, A. Define human rights and state 4 characteristics, B. Distinguish first and second generation rights with examples, C. State 5 rights in Chapter 4 with their section numbers. Attempt a quiz on your LMS. Know your rights, they are your strongest protection as a Nigerian citizen. Visit Litech Academy at academy.litech.com.ng. Until next time.